Lucky Boys Podcast.
Welcome to Lucky Boys Podcast. I'm Will, and I have Norm over there. We thought it would be cool to give you guys perspective from Joe Chan and Mr. Don Lee, Chinatown natives, who's been here for years, and most recently remembering Corki, picking up where he left off, fighting against the injustice and speaking out and speaking up against it. And you both knew him very dearly.
Yeah, Corki's a great guy.
And, you know, as a fellow photographer, and the thing is, we have two different perspectives. He's the straight shooter. He always telling me, he's like, everything that he's been doing with the photography, and a lot of times where the Asians and certain populations do not have a voice, his work in photography is the voice for injustice. And that's, one of the things that I would like to continue speaking out for injustice. I mean, we've been at these rallies, with the anti-Asian hate and all of that stuff going on right now. And I feel that it's also, some of our silence is also giving these individuals consent to allow them to do what they're doing, and which I, think the system is also need to be revamped, because if they are catching these individuals and they're releasing them, and, why bother just having all of these advocacies when you're just constantly putting them back out in the streets?
Now, what do you mean by that when you say our silence is giving them consent? Who are we giving consent to?
Well, basically, with the hate situation, whether, you're Asian or somebody else or a victim, as I mentioned earlier, even with Gerald Millen and the fact that he knew the person that called him coronavirus on the court. But if you are not going to call these people out immediately to point out to them that this is wrong, your silence is pretty much giving, people out there consent, because that's what's happening. And we do need to speak out. And right off the bat, and the point that when things happen immediately, we need to point them out and say, why? It's just, does it make you feel better? Does it make you feel whatever it is? But a lot of times that silence, it's just, either that, there are other ways they call it silence. How do you feel about that, Don?
I'm not sure silence is really the word. I think one thing about Corki, what's unique about his photography, is that he does not take pictures of celebrities. He said it in many interviews. So he never got, so it's always about individuals, the people. That's what he's focuses on. And I think often, and on that note, what's been happening now is all Instagram, and the celebrity focused. And I think that is such a distraction, because what is the voice? The silence is because the individual, the people that Corki Lee brought to life to bring voice with photograph are being silenced in the current environment.
So the media is
right?
doing the silence.
So because we don't, if you don't, the old saying, if you don't make a tree falls in a forest, doesn't make any sound. And that's what's going on, right? If you look at just what happened yesterday with this rally, it was created by our community leaders to offer a safe space for celebrities.
And Don, what rally was this?
Oh, this is the anti-hate rally.
Yeah, by ALDAF,
right?
I think it was?
No, Asian American Federation.
Okay.
Right. So, I mean, what's embarrassing is, quite frankly, here are social organizations in our community who's been fighting for bilingual languages, but yet the own sign that calls for people to go to rally, it's in English only. So what is it really about? The bottom line is we need to make people accountable. We need to bring voice to the voiceless. Corki done that through his photography. And if we are to live through that legacy, that's what we need to do in everything that we do.
There is something that you mentioned, and I don't want to let it slip by. You asked, what is it about? And I'm wondering that to myself. If it's not for bilingual people, if it isn't for people of Chinese people in Chinatown, right? Then who is it for? What is it about?
makes you wonder, is it just a vent? Is it, because I'm a simple person. I'm a son of an immigrant. And like most immigrants, we're pretty simple. Immigrants come to this country for one purpose only, to escape poverty, and sometimes extreme poverty, right? So when they're here, all they want is to make sure that the next generation have an opportunity. But here we are, their voice is being ignored, right? And their voices don't count. All we hear is elected officials who present their own false narrative, continuing to, for example, what is the solution they offer? We're very pragmatic. We basically singularly focus immigrant parents to make sure that kids have the next generation, and they will sacrifice everything they got. Take that into context. Are they really silent? Or as we say, is the juice worth the squeeze? If they report the crime, what happens to them? What happened to the grandma, right? She went and they told her to go home, call 911. She still went to call the precinct. There's probably 2 weeks worth of people calling her constantly, asking the same question over and over and over and over again. They're a victim of a crime where they're going to drag your ass out and go to the same crime scene to relive that. And then what happened? What happened to the perpetrator in Queens? He was released the next day, right? There's no accountability.
And some random guy just threw shit at her feet, picked her up and shoved her. And there's a big uproar on social media. Olivia Munn called it out.
And friends.
And she called that out, used her platform, Enough is Enough, highlighted that incident, and that drew media attention. And usually when it draws media attention of that level, they usually get the person. So they got that person quickly. And I think within 24 hours, they were released.
Them.
But I don't think that's the police fault, correct? It is, they have to follow the laws of the system. If that guy lawyered up, basically the police has to follow the law and allow him to go, right? I just want to draw some clarification here.
I think that's all fine and dandy. But for the victims, they basically said, again, these are very simple people who are honest and said, I'm here to make sure that I provide for my family. I got my ass kicked. And then the perps walk. It is as simple as that. All the other reasons, explanations, do they care? Of course they do. But all those nuances, the things that really matters to them at the time. I mean, we're talking about, and what bothers me also is this continued suggestion that anti-Asian, anti-East Asianness are only a recent phenomenon. That's complete bullshit. Of all the people listening, when you were in school, when you were kids in school, how many of them got picked on? Let's be honest about that. This doesn't happen now because, some jerk in the name of Donald Trump decided to say some shit.
It's been happening before.
Or whether he's in there or not, it's not going to cease to exist.
Not only was it not that was the problem, it was unchecked, unchallenged. Chinese kids from elementary school, I was in elementary school, I got on a fight, right? And it's happened all the way to college. So this is not like this. When people say systemic, let's really talk about systemic. That's what I'm talking about. Don't overgloss this stuff, make it Instagram friendly. Let's get real about this. This has been happening. Back in the late 70s, the 80s, when there were factories, when I talked to my seniors, you know what they say to me? If the low bond asked me to work late, and all of you, check with your moms and your parents who work in factories. What did they do? They borrowed $10 because they were targeted, right? And they were hit so many times, they just said, you know what? Let me pull my $10 so that I don't get hit, right? But now with this hate crime, you can even put a $10 up and you're still gonna get your ass kicked, right? So that's, if you Google, I just Google Chinese food delivery murder, 38 million hits on Google, okay? Find it for yourself. So is that not systemic? Do we really want to talk about this? So what I'm talking about I'm not a historian, right? I'm not the Corki Lees. I'm not none of those stuff. I'm just a simple guy who lives in Chinatown and say, what is my own life experience? What is that of my friends? You grew up being put up with all that stuff, right? You get your parents who are afraid to go home, but they're going to borrow $10. You have tens of thousands of, just random attack. And this whole part is, let's have a real discussion, right? And sometimes when I talk to some of the younger generations, they're like, they're canceling their parents.
Right.
They're racist, right? I mean, if we believe people are not born racist, maybe they should take a little time to say, hey, how did my mom or parent become racist, right? Can we look at,
drill down a step further.
Yeah.
Do they not deserve that, right?
So you're saying people that are calling their parents racist should question why they became racist. Because if you're not born being racist, you should ask your parents, how did they come to that conclusion? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying is, do the same thing that you're doing. We're talking about criminal justice reform, and I am definitely for restorative justice when it makes sense. But if we're going to say, before we punish anyone, to look at the systemic things, that the oppression that make them who they are, right? And I don't disagree with that. Why don't you offer the same courtesy to your own parents and your grandparents? That's what I'm saying.
So saying like they've dealt with things that their kids can't even imagine, where if they got home from work or they were going home, they were being targeted constantly in the way it's designed to get them. And eventually, after being targeted over and over, watching their friends being targeted, their families, themselves as victims. And because of that, they may look at certain people with disdain and carefulness. And that's tough. There was this tweet on social media from someone by the name of Yu-Ji Li Yang. What's so enraging about these attacks on Asian elders is how, in my experience, my older relatives minimize their pain, opinions, and the space they occupy in order to unburden others. They mind their own business while trying to survive. Targeting them feels especially cruel. Isn't that the damn truth?
Spot on.
Absolutely.
Right.
An example of that is the guy that was pushed, the Thai guy, the Thai man, 84 years old, 83.
Right.
I mean, there's just so many cases. It's hard to freaking keep up at this point. He came to this country in order to help his daughter and his son-in-law raise their child while they go to work. He wanted to unburden them. So what greater gift can he do than to take care of his grandchild? And how nice it is to have your father come in, someone that you trust with your child. You give you a peace of mind while you try to build the American dream. And then to have someone take that all away. Unprovoked attack. Strip you from that. Just seems so unfair and cruel.
You're taking away, these are individuals who have decided that their life, the rest of their life on earth, is just to make sure the next generation have a fair shot. They're not looking for glory. They're not looking for what is their dream. Their dream is just to, and not asking for any return, just to know I lived that life that I don't want my kids to have. With all of that done.
And that's all parents, by the way.
Yes,
most good
all
parents. That goes across cultures.
Correct. That's nature, right? But the thing is, what's different is, these are the parents who took that extra step to say, I'm going to come to a country where I know nothing, but I am determined that for getting nothing for my life, my children's going to get a better future. That's the only thing they want. And we're going to take their life away. We're going to put them in fear. We're going to have their own kids cancel them out, right? To not even listen to them, don't even offer the courtesy. When I hear Letitia James, and I hear the mayor and all of these guys who are doing this nothing short of a political campaign yesterday, it infuriates me, because then you don't know our community. Then you don't know the same people that you're supposed to be advocating for. When you say, do not be fearful, come to me. They're not fearful of the system. They're fearful of the fact that they will inconvenience the kids. They're fearful of the fact that nothing will happen. They're fearful of not the system because all the friends went through the system. People don't talk about what the victim's experience is like, right? And they need to do that, all right? Back in 2002, I believe, there was this gentleman up in the Bronx, right? He works in a liquor store behind those plexiglass. One day there was a fight. So he wanted to be a good Samaritan. He comes out and told you to stop the fight. They punched him and he was dead. And that was an assault charge. Why are we fighting for a hate crime? It is not because we just want to be hate versus hate. Let's be realistic about it. If the perpetrators are not arrested, they cannot even get a court order of protection. Is anyone thinking about the rights of the victims? You know, I'm not saying, hey man, let's call this a hate crime because, yeah, that's what it is, because it sounds good, because it's Instagram friendly. No, fuck that. It's about what are the laws that can available to that. When the city of New York not calling these crimes the felony that it is, the victim cannot even get an order of protection. Not that it will do much, but they even deny that very basic right of protection. Why aren't our people talking about that? Is that too much to ask?
And that itself is injustice. Because the bottom line is right now, the victims has practically no power, and they're going to have to relive the incidents, because every time that they have to explain to them what happened, they're living that situation over and over again. And, you know, it's also, I work in the Bronx, and I noticed that they would target the undocumented because they know they're not going to go to the cops. And, you know,
it's traumatizing, man.
It is traumatizing because now you're getting double screwed. You know, this is like a practically double fry whatever the hell you want to call it. Because now, as a victim, you have to relive every time when you have to explain to these guys in the police station. And the bottom line is, you know, some of them don't even want to take your you know, the incident report. Either that or they just don't bother with it, or it's not worth, you know, their, you know, the work or whatever it may be. You know, they're out to, in the beginning, they're supposed to be protecting and to serve. That's the part. However, you know, beyond that, when you have a criminal justice system with the revolving door, with DA Katz saying, well, you know, I'm for restore the justice and all of this, and next thing you know, In-N-Out burger. And what happens? And, you know, you show no sympathy, no compassion for the victim. Meanwhile, they're out on bail, and they're going to end up doing it again. There are repeat offenders that happen to be like 90 times. We got one guy in the subway beating up everybody, and it's in the Post. The guy had record of over 90 incidents, over 90. We're not talking about 10, 20, over 90, and he's out there. And the man was laughing on the news. I'm going to be fucking doing this shit again. And what do you do with that? And that's pure blatant injustice flawed by design.
We talked about, like, you know, it's case by case, right? How can you let everyone out? Revolving door policy, whatever the bill reform states, and saying like any perp that does a crime, anybody, any type of crime, they're allowed to leave. And it fears to me because case by case, I mean, the person who pushed the lady on the ground and he was released like within 48 hours. That infuriates me. Like, now he's out there and he could do it again, and there's no one to stop him. And the fact that it was on social media, that also pisses me off because it only got attention because a celebrity tweeted about it or said something about it instead of the cops doing their fucking job.
Now, the lessons that I learned from BLM is that we really need to re-examine systemic problems, right? And that means to really need to go through everything, to really look at it. How do we solve this problem? It's going to be solved overnight? Of course not. But if elected officials coming out publicly are not even getting the problem right, they'll never solve it, right? They're like, oh, culturally you're afraid to report. No, because it doesn't pay for them to report. It causes more pain. It causes more problem. It causes more strife. It causes the younger parents not able to go home and cook for their kids. It causes them to relive that in their whole lifetime and time again, as Joe mentioned. You know, and that's just one example of it. You know, the other part is, what about the rest of their life experience, right? I remember, and we all know this, if you go to a DMV, you see all the frontline people being African Americans, generally speaking, right? Hopefully but you see all the supervisors are white. So when they have a problem, it's always the white person coming to solve the problem. Okay? There was a time when all the cops are white. So as a perpetrator, it's always the cops. So fix that problem, right? But what I'm saying is, before we cancel our own parents, let's look at respect and understand their life experience the same way you give to other people, right? When Daniel Wu and Daniel J. Kim said, I'm going to do it $25,000 and I want people to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, there was an uproar in the Asian American community.
Wait, an uproar attacking Daniel Wu and Daniel Day Kim?
And saying, more cop is not the solution. That is not how you're going to solve the problem.
But there were such catalysts to bring or highlight attention to this matter.
Well, not even that. But yesterday, at the same rally, when Letitia James said, forget about non-uniform volunteer patrol. I want uniform patrol. When she says, I will make sure they're prosecuted to the full extent of the law. The same people that were complaining about Daniel Wu and Daniel, they were cheering. So what is the hypocrisy? How is it that, why don't these people say the same?
When a politician that's not Asian says it, but when Asians say it, it's not okay? Is that what you're saying?
Go look it up.
It's a matter of perspective.
Go look it up.
Wait, I didn't even know people were attacking Daniel Wu and Daniel Day Kim.
There are people who are saying, hey, why do you know?
Now you have another faction going, Joe, you're Asian, shut the fuck up. And then meanwhile, my friend over here, who's not Asian, saying, hey, Will, I will punish your ass to the full extent of the law. And everybody else is cheering. Is that what you're saying? Is that what I'm understanding?
That's what happened.
That's what happened.
It's what happened.
I mean, come on. You got people who are hiring signs.
Wait, is this Asians? You saying Asians are attacking Daniel Wu and Daniel Day Kim?
Yeah.
Don, you're saying like people, the same Asians, but we don't know specifically if those are the same people that are attacking Daniel Day Kim and saying the same things. Well, if we're talking about the younger generation of Asian Americans that are talking about, let's not PC culture, right? And let's not let's not focus on harsher policing.
What I mean to say is, I'm not a journalist. I'm not an English major. I'm just a simple guy from Chinatown, right, who cooked my way to college. So if I'm not that clear, my apologies. My point is, there are people who are willing to write to complain about Daniel Day Wu and Daniel Wu. Why are these people complaining about Letitia James? That's what I'm saying. Are they the exact people? No. What I'm saying, the same people who are going out to Instagram, putting this stuff up, why don't you say something about that?
Like Daniel Wu, Daniel Day Kim, I can agree with that. If someone does something, they should be punished to the full extent
of the law.
Yes, that makes sense to me.
A lot of times people don't understand the fact that you have the law and order and then the criminal justice system, and they think they're all like it's as one. Because now if you do have cops that are supposedly protect and serve, but at the same time there are right now people saying fuck the police, defund the police, fuck the police, defund the police. So that's one thing that they're taking down. But now Letitia James says she wants more cops.
She went a special unit.
Special unit. So, but then again,
special
it's like
unit for what?
if you
Just
want
anti-Asian
special
hate
unit,
crimes.
if you
More
so
cops.
legitimize it.
so if you rah for a,
That's a good thing.
but they're now screaming defund the police. So now you have a conflict of what the politicians are, of what they're after, because the BLM thing is defund the police.
I'm
But
not
this
sure,
isn't-
I'm
but
not
this
sure
isn't-
the BLM thing. I'm just saying that.
It's overall right now.
But what I'm extrapolating out of all of this is that Letitia wants to increase the police presence
Right.
to address the crime that's happening, the rising crime that's happening in Asian American
United States.
society. That makes sense to me, right? Because if everything else is falling, like we were saying, if everything else is falling and this is rising, in anything you would want to plug the leak, and whether this is business or it's just common sense thinking. I'm with Letitia all day on that.
I'm with her. The only thing I said was, I'm with her. No, I'm in complete agreement. I think she's a wonderful state attorney general, and I hope he investigates crap out of Mayor Cuomo. But
I think she's going to do Trump
but
too,
on,
by the
on
way.
this issue, I think my only one thing is that they did not do enough research when they said, hey, you're afraid to report, and you don't need to be afraid to report. No, it's not because they're afraid, right? Look at their experience. What
Wait,
is
who's saying that?
experience?
Who's they? Who said that?
All the
All the politicians?
All the politicians.
Yeah. At the rally yesterday?
All of them.
They all said that. And the
We're
thing is-
afraid to report. It's culture. It's language.
And you're saying
that.
it's deeper than that. You're saying that it's not that we're afraid to report. It's that when we're reporting, you're telling us to go home. You make it hard for us to report. Is that it?
Not just hard. What is the outcome?
It's
Right?
not worth it.
It's not worth it
That
because
there will be no justice.
Because you got to remember, the immigrant community are not privileged to take days off to go to this stuff. If they go to court,
They lose a day's pay. Not
Right.
only that, they'll lose the job, because those particular jobs that they hold, it's not a white collar thing where you're like properly employed.
It doesn't come with all the best
Yeah.
benefits.
And at the same time, as I mentioned
It's-
earlier, when you do snitch, not as a whistleblower, you go back to your neighborhood, these people are going to know, and that's what they're.
I don't even think that's the case.
But that's
For
also.
me,
it's-
there could be people like that, but the people that I know is when they got the call, who's the one to interpret for them? Their own kids.
Right. That's true.
Let's.
That's true.
This is what I deal with people who live with this thing every day.
And now you're bringing your kids
Right?
into this.
Now you bring your kids
and
into
no
this
parents
stuff.
want to do that. No parents want to bring their kids into their shit.
Right? So that's the reason why they don't report. Not this afraid, not this cultural, not this, none of it.
And it goes down to money,
Right.
because now your kid have to take a day off of whatever they're doing or
Right.
in school. It's
And
always,
and you know what? A lot of them don't even want their kids to know.
yeah.
They don't
They
because
don't.
what
They
is
don't.
if
I'll
they
tell you
put-
that. I'll tell you that firsthand. When
It's
things
trauma-
happen to my parents,
They don't want to traumatize the kids.
when I was a kid, they didn't let me know. When bad things happened to my parents, when they were victims of a crime, I did not find out about it till I was a man. I was an adult, and I'm like, what the hell? Like that happened to you, and you didn't let me know? I was in the dark all these years.
They eat their bitterness in silence
Because-
they don't want you to worry about. They want you to focus in what you're supposed to do to better your life, so you can carry on. A lot of times, and my daughter would say things to me after she graduated in college, and you know what she said to me? Because you would have been in jail if they would have found. If I told you what they had done to me in school, I know you, Dad, you would have fucked them up. And I would. I'm the one right now. I'm saying I have that particular set of skills. I will find you, and I will make you disappear. And my daughter knows that and that's why she didn't tell me until she graduated college of all the shit that happened to her in middle school.
But Will, let me just add one more point. It's not so much that they don't want the kids to know. If they know the outcome is something positive, they would do it. They would want the kids to say, hey, I fought back and look what happened. But why take on a fight that you know you're not going to win? Why take on a fight that you know that they'll punish you 10 times more for reporting? Not for anything else, but because the system will punish you by dragging your ass out, by telling your kids, by interpreters that might not be correct, that you need to correct.
You have to translate in proper context.
So-
and I've done that before. It's very difficult.
Right. So the point is that these are the same people who says, I'm going to come to this country, I'm going to do something great. So they want an outcome. They're very pragmatic. If they're not going to get the outcome, they're not going to waste time. So they're going to put all the energy on the outcome that matters. Now they put their kids to school. Now what's the mayor saying? What is the chancellor saying? Not one, this does not support one group as in Asians, right? These kind of rhetoric, it's what escalated the tension in our communities when people were kids. We need to hold people accountable. Our school system needs to be held accountable. Why talk about it when the time's the victim? But how did we get here? Why is the victim not talking about it, as I explained, right? And I'm not that smart. These are the people who told me this is why they don't do it.
So what's the answer here? What needs to be done? Is it our politicians? Is it Letitia James? Does she need? I mean, what she's saying sounds like it's a major step forward. But I look at the timeline of the execution. That's something that people should look at closely. Then you could look at these politicians that were there. Yeah, a lot of them, they're playing the game. They're playing the game. This is great exposure for me. People see me here.
It's election year too.
Exactly.
Right?
They see me here. They see what's up, and they know that I'm involved with the community. I'm here for you, right?
Tick on one, you tick on all of us. Well, where are they now?
Vote.
Are they in Chinatown right now?
Where were you prior to the elections? Where were you during your time in office when this has been happening already for the longest time? I'm not sure I would look for them to solve the issue, even though they have the power, but I'm not sure that I can rely on it because I don't see any results. So where should we look to solve this?
We look for history that worked. This month is Black History Month. And what I learned from Black History Month is that you need to make politicians uncomfortable. That's why giving them a safe space, as we did yesterday, is not the solution. Lyndon B. Johnson didn't say, hey, let me hand over the civil rights, to you guys. Let's change all the laws. He told the Black community, let me know how bad you want it. Dr. Martin Luther King.
Motherfucker. He was one
Martin
racist
Luther King
motherfucker.
decided to, but at least he's practical. At least he listened. He did not give bullshit, right? I mean, I'm not a historian, but at least he says, you show me how bad you want it, I'll do something. And the African community did. For 10 years, they march. What do? We give them safe space. Our own people are feeding them lies instead of correcting them. And say, wait a minute. Not because we don't want to, because we're afraid. Because the system is failing us.
So you're saying that our people who are at the forefront fighting for this are enabling the politicians to promote their agenda, giving them a safe space, using this as a platform to furthering their name or their personal agenda within the political climate, rather than making actual change. They're using the guys that are fighting for us, the ones that have that clout right now on social media, that go, oh, you're the one that's fighting for us, and using them to boost their ratings. Is that it? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying immigrants are born optimists. Otherwise, we would just stay where we are and don't look for better options. And I don't have a reason to believe that these guys are bad people. I'm sure they are. But I would just say, dig a little bit deeper. Really understand the people you're supposed to represent. Don't look through your lenses. Don't look through that from other people's lenses. Talk to them. I'm fortunate maybe because I grew up in Chinatown. These are the people I grew up with. And they share with me those real experience. Right? How many of them actually know that actually about not 10 $1 bills, $10 so that the guy said, okay, I'm taking that 10 and I'm not going to punch them. Right?
And they're still gambling because
right?
You're not even sure when after they take your money, they're going to jack you up again.
Right. But is it because they are, because they're weak? Or because they just want to make sure they can go home and cook a damn meal for you so you can go to school?
Yeah.
And because they fight, are the cops, are the police protecting them? right? So, I mean, we need to really think about this.
No, you're right. My parents, I didn't understand this when I was a kid. And maybe a lot of people listening didn't understand as well when they were kids. But as an adult, I can tell you that everything my parents did, it was always about the big picture. They looked at us first. And I can't tell you how many sacrifices they made just so that...
to better you, to make you better.
Yeah.
And to make your children, for the next 7 generations, better. And the thing is, it's hard, the fact that what Don was saying earlier, as far as like what we have to take care of, what we have to do. And it's hard because back in our time growing up, we didn't have a safe space. We didn't have a cry closet. We ate, and you have to remember, sometimes you have to be in a very uncomfortable place to find those solutions. Because once you're safe, then you let your guard down and you let other people to try to do things for you. But that's not how things are supposed to get things done. You don't find solutions in comfortable spots. You find solutions in the hardest areas. And that's why when we, in our families, when we eat bitter, I mean, that term is a generational term. Yeah. You don't eat bitter in a safe space. And this is where that political correctness and that filter, that bullshit that comes into me, throw that shit out the window. Because, man, you're going to have a safe space and all it in this cry closet. I said, listen, I fucked up on my exam. I'm not going to find a room to cry. You get back on the books and you do better.
Don, you mentioned we need to apply more pressure and make them uncomfortable. I could not agree more. I think for a lot of Asian Americans throughout the United States and across the world, they're new to this. This is very new to all of us in terms of what's going on. You could say coronavirus kickstart this, and people are looking for an outlet or a reason to get at us or target our communities throughout the world. And a lot of them are used to being in a comfortable space in their own bubble. And the people that I'm meeting when I go out to these rallies, when I'm out here volunteering, or when I see you guys and how I met you, right, for the first time, the conversations that took place and what was the reoccurring theme was, this is my first time being involved in anything. So being that there are so many people new to this, they're not really sure how to navigate this. So people that are more experienced, like the politicians, like the people that had, I guess, many repetitions of this, they'll know how to move further. So the people that are new to this space are just going to follow who the thought leaders are in this space, and perhaps without too much questioning. And the points that you raise, I think, are very important. We have to drill a step further. We have to look into things deeper. Are we culturally afraid to report something?
It's not an afraid thing. It's more of a condition, because once again, that moral minority sets in. And I've said it before that we don't have a Chinese Al Sharpton that can be loud and tactically articulate what we need. We don't have a Chinese Malcolm X where we can be able to stand in front of a microphone in front of the population and say, listen, this system and the injustice, you have to be able to have that thunder voice to say, you're fucking with us in a very methodical way by the system. This injustice is coming from your system. And at the same time, we need to have that representative in such a way to be able to articulate it like a Malcolm X. As much as I'm not too crazy about Al Sharpton, he's out there with that voice when it's needed, and people will listen.
I think that for us to really respect and want to do something right, let me just say this, to make people uncomfortable, it's simple. Tell the truth. Don't tell what sounds like the truth, the real truth. That's enough for them to feel uncomfortable. But if we're really going to talk about civil rights, let's finish the job that they die for us for. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, I would not be here without them. But their job is not finished. What is their job ultimately? Is to eradicate poverty. That has not been done. It's a class, more than class, than it is race.
I think we said
These
that
people,
earlier.
this is not happening. Andrew Yang didn't get his ass kicked. Yeah, some New York Times journalist, someone called him something. But that's very different from a knife stab into your back. That's very different from you have to borrow $10 when you go home late because you have to work extra hours. That's very different from what people in the hood in Chinatown are living every day. So if we really solve this problem, we don't need the symbolism. That's a tool. I'm not saying it's do whatever you need to do to get the message out. But stay focused on what this is about. It's eradicating poverty. And that is the one failure that is the one goal that have not been fulfilled. All right? New York City, according to, Andrew Yang, right? Our budget if it's a country, it's with the 11th in the world. Yet we have extreme poverty. The people getting killed, the food delivery guys, are not happening on the Upper East Side. You know where this is happening. Does that mean because I hate black people? No, because I want, let's solve the problem by eradicating the poverty that's there.
So poverty is a catalyst to all of this, whether it's a black community, an Asian community, whatever community. If poverty is causing this.
There's no question about it.
Mike Tyson, I heard Mike Tyson on a podcast say something interesting where he said he used to, in his former life, before he was known as Iron Mike Tyson, said something to the point of he used to rob people. He openly says it. He used to rob people, mug people. And they questioned him. Some rapper said he thinks that Mike Tyson actually robbed his mom when he was a kid while he was with his mom. And Mike Tyson, very sorry about it. He's an adult now. He's a different person then. And he said, you know what? If I robbed you back then you probably had more than me. And that was his whole reason, because he was in a place of poverty and he needed help. It was either do or die. And I'm not justifying anything, but what I am saying is that there's people out there that need help. And if they don't get that help, they're going to do whatever they can to survive. And I think that's your point. And that's why Malcolm X and MLK primary goal was to bring down these color lines and address poverty. So, because they knew that if that problem can be solved, that would be one less major fight to deal with. And it would help us get into a playing field where we're even instead of an uphill climb.
Yeah, you would have the time. I mean, right now, people are just like, am I going to be able to feed my family? When you're down to that level, rather than, okay, where am I going to park my money? Should it be in stocks? Should it be in, we're talking
They
about
don't
whole
have the
different
luxury
things, right?
of that. And the thing is, with the pandemic, and, sorry.
No, you're okay. There's somebody behind you.
With the pandemic, because right now we have, unemployment. Of course, a lot of people there are people back to work. There is no work because majority of the people that are living in poverty, they're underserved, all of these jobs are gone. And they're
in the
worried
service
about,
industries,
and the rent needs to be paid. The utility the eviction notices, they all build up. And right now, that bubble is about to burst because as much as even that $1,400 coming in, how much of that money is going to be able to provide for people that are in dire need of finances? And they're going to have to decide where that money is going to go, whether they're going to live, eat, or, what have you. And there are, these struggles are real when you are living below the poverty line. And I'm working with people in the Bronx and in Harlem and people that are in Brooklyn that are way below the poverty line. So, and now we have a bigger gap than ever because of what's happening with the economy in New York City. It's bad enough that the silent minority, which is the Asians, is actually the poorest. If you look at Huffington Post, which I mentioned before, we are, the poorest.
Who is drawing this narrative that Asians are rich and that we don't deal with racism and poverty? They don't even classify us as minorities. A lot of states, a lot of universities, a lot of corporations.
And also there's something, if you look at the bigger picture, we talk about how to get out of poverty, right? For Chinese Americans in particular, I don't want to speak for other Asians because I know my company best. Education. Education is the way out. That's how I got out. That's how a lot of people get out, right? But yet in our own system, we're being shamed to be good in school. We're getting attacked, right? This whole SHSAT stuff, right? No one want to talk about the reality is, it's not about us versus them. It's about people who say, this is my way out, my ticket out of poverty is not to depend on government, but depend on education. This country will give me a fair shot if I get education to my kids. It's a very simple formula. It have worked for generations, and that's what they believe still is the case. It might not be anymore, but that's what they believe it is. But if that's the one thing that they have, but yet society keeps shunning them, keeps shaming them, calling them test robots, calling them all kinds of names.
Or worse, take the whole test away.
Right?
They're taking the whole program away.
So I think that's the difference. Different company group have different ways to deal with different problems. Why did they say juk sing? Our ancestors get this shit right. Why not Twinkie? Why not banana? Why juk sing?
And what does juk sing mean for those of those? What
juk
does it
sing
mean?
means dry bamboo. Means it's yellow on the outside, white on the inside. What it also means, what the ancestors is telling us is this. No matter who you think you are, how white you are, they will always see your skin as a bamboo. You will always be Chinese to them.
Oh,
that's the other analogy.
So don't kid yourself. You will always be Chinese to them first, right?
Yo.
So we don't learn those lessons.
Is that? Oh,
that's why it's
my
called
uncle
juk sing.
said that to my cousin, and
Right.
she was a graduate from Harvard with a PhD.
Right.
You can still be a graduate from Harvard with a PhD, but you're still gonna be a Chinaman.
All right. So jokka, then they said the two end is like if you're not born in this country, you have it worse because you don't really understand the American. They would not even accept you as an American. Period. They would see you Chinese. Period. But you didn't understand that way, and you don't have enough knowledge to understand the Chinese way. So you are stuck. The cock is the end of the dry bamboo.
The nut.
The two, because bamboos are compartmentized. So that means that you're not getting through either way. New immigrants, you get your shit even worse, is what they try to tell you. Because you're not getting through either way.
you
That's
think you are,
jokka,
but you're not.
But you are not. No matter how
It's an
white you
illusion.
think you are, it doesn't matter.
You know what? I have a few friends that are in the entertainment industry, and I would say a year and a half ago, as recent as a year and a half to 2 years, what they were saying to me was, "Will, we're finally got our foot in the door in Hollywood, right? We feel like we're getting the representation, we're getting our movies, we're getting our story told." Coronavirus hits, and then the reality hits, and then they tell me, "Yo, they hate us, Will. It's like, I felt like we were so close." And now that you mentioned what you just did, I'm going, was it all an illusion? Did you think we got a ticket onto their level of the boat? Where we're working our way out of the bottom, we're finally there and we're right next to them. Think again. Because what this has shown to us,
Always a dry bamboo.
we may think we're out of it. We may think that we're in their club now, in this exclusive club where people praise and want and been dreaming of their whole life. And I know that there's Asians out there like that who even Asian guys, like if they had a white girlfriend, they were just so fucking, they look so goofy in these pictures because they look so proud that they had this white girlfriend. And I remember I even had one of my friends, he dated a white girl. I think it was like prom or one of those things, right? And he brought a white girlfriend, and she was okay, mid-range. You know, wasn't like off the charts supermodel, but she was okay. She was a looker. And the way he held her so tightly, and it just looked goofy as fuck. You know, the way he was so proud, like he thought he was better than everyone. Like, hey, I'm white now. You know, he had that look, he had that air about him. His nose was up. And he had this air of smugness about him. And I just looked at him like, bro, that's dope that, you know, you feel so proud of someone you're with, but because of her race, like how goofy does that make you look? You know what I mean? If you find someone that you love and you're so proud of that, or someone that you just click with, your soulmate, whatever that is, right? Good for you. Good on you. Enjoy that. If you're in love and all this, that's fine. But as a status?
No, my step-grandmother is a white woman. All right.
And you're married to a white woman.
Right. My son was a white woman.
But I didn't need to do what, because a lot of them basically, believe it or not, are usually in academia, high academia, all the Ivy ghettos. That's where they would go find them because of that.
Yeah. So what I learned from that splendid family is just simple love. My grandfather loved my grandmother just like the way she loved her. You know, she was a custodian on Baxter Street, and my grandfather's a machinist. After work, they met up and they care for each other. That's what it is. Two people without their family, and they came together. It's all about love. So, you know, all these things, I'm like, have we regressed? You know, what the hell's happening now? Right? So for me, you know, it's kind of weird because, but net, the one thing, you know, we started with Corki. Let's talk about Corki. One of the project I worked with them was what the people were cooking for the railroad when they were building the railroad. And through that research, I came across this one gentleman. His name escapes me now, but it was in the early 1900s, 18 something. So he's an immigrant, went to California. He worked his way up, and one day he run his own store. The farms, they were beating the crap out of the Mexicans. Remember, California used to be Mexico. So they chased them out. And this Mexican farmer says, why don't you buy my land? So he goes, all right, I'll get the land. And then when it happened was, they said, well, you know, you're Chinese. You're not allowed to own land in this country at that time, right? So he goes, well, my sweetheart is born in the USA. So he marries her, goes to court and say, great, now my wife can register all those land. Well, they said, oh, did you just say you marry him? Well, because he's an immigrant, you just lost your citizenship even though you were born in the USA. So what he said was, in his quote, he says, government and things can take things away from you. The only thing they cannot take away is what's in your brain. And that's why he devoted to making sure people get educated. Education is the only thing that government cannot take away from you. If we want to talk about Chinese American history, for me, those are the ones that you want to talk about. Not the chop suey, not those tired bullshit that we hear about, you know, to feed the white people, to feed other people's needs, to make us feel inferior. But talk about this man who said, hey, I did not give up. They're taking everything I ever owned from me, but they cannot take away what's in my brain, which is education. And I'm going to devote everyone getting education. So
be proud of who you are, and if you're smart, don't be ashamed of that, right?
Don't be.
If that's your superpower,
it's important because that 14th Amendment, to understand the fact that the person that you are, that's my favorite word, the person that you are, gave us everything what we have today. That 14th Amendment did us justice, and you have to understand that to articulate with the word person. We are a person that put us where we are right now. And if you don't know the law, the education did not permit you to understand the law.
Yeah.
And, it sounds funny sometimes. I always tell some guys that you have to learn how to fight that way.
It's like no matter how much what tough road we've gone through and how accomplished we feel, whether in academics, in business, as an entrepreneur, as an athlete, as an entertainer in Asian American society. We're reminded. They won't forget to remind of what they think of us.
And we need to remind them, we did not get the education to make ourselves just better. Yeah, like all immigrants in this country, we all come to make a better life. But the reality is, through that, we also help build a stronger country. The education we get across the board, right? The contribution that we have made, not just individual, how much more American is that?
I don't know. I'd probably get a hat that says "Immigrant makes America great."
Ooh, that's interesting.
It's what we, the immigrants, is what
a
made
lot of
America great.
Yeah, there was some politicians and scientists that were saying like immigrants is what made this country great. It's when you look at they recruited the smartest minds, and they had to procure that talent outside of the
And
U.S.
we're
because their
all
academic system, it's no
figures.
secret, it's much stronger than ours.
We are all hidden
So
figures. All of us are hidden figures. So
They-
many people that design things, engineer things, made California, irrigated waters that when nobody else can do it, the wineries, and all the vineyards and all the produce, and of course, whoever spiked those rails to be able to transport all of the resources across this nation.
Yeah.
Immigrants.
Yeah.
Don?
So I say, let's use truth to make people feel uncomfortable. Because the fact that they don't even have the truth, we can make them feel, but just tell them the truth. It's not that difficult, number one. Number two, hold them accountable. These fancy words, we care. Well, show me how much you really care.
Through actions.
Actions.
Let's see.
You take on one, you take on all of us. Well, all of them are now, none of them in Chinatown right now, the next day. Or in fact, after they said that, they get on their chauffeur, police escort, and left. So much for pick on one and pick on all.
Yeah.
Keep it real.
Well, thank you both for coming on the
Thank
show
you.
to address it. And thank you for all the years and time you put into the community. It means a lot across, not just in New York, but across the world. It gives us a voice because there's a lot of people in different areas that are listening to this, that are fighting the same fight and just really not sure how to move about this. So thank you for sharing that and being outspoken at a time where we desperately need it. Norm, thanks for, spotting us on today's podcast. I know, you're not in front of the camera to see your beautiful face, but thank you for being excellent.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and we'll continue to do what we do. And thank you guys for listening and supporting Lucky Boys to this point. I really do appreciate you guys. And thanks again for listening. Until then, the next one, this is Lucky Boys, and we are out.